INEOS now strongly considering keeping Erik ten Hag for next season. Is this because of the fan backlash they've received, with many polls across various different platforms showing that 80% or more of the Man United fan base want Erik ten Hag to stay? These are some of the topics we will be discussing on this morning's live show. But before we get into that, please smash a like on today's video. Let's try and see 200 likes on this morning's show. And if this is your first time watching, please consider subscribing to the channel as well. We will be live throughout the whole of the transfer window. I'll have a show for you in the morning, a show for you in the evening, and if anything breaks during the day, I will go live as well. So make sure you subscribe and get involved in Daily Red Devil. Right, let's start the show off with some positivity then, because I always try and bring a bit of a positive spin on things. I know at the moment there's so much uncertainty, there's so much toxicity, there's so much anger in the fan base, it seems, even though we've just won a major trophy in the FA Cup. We've turned a terrible season into a positive season, but there is still anger, there's divide. And that's obviously because of the manager. But the story I want to bring you guys this morning is that apparently Mainoo is set to sign a new contract at Manchester United. He is going to be rewarded for his performances this season. 100% deserved. 19 years of age. Unbelievable player. Completely bossed that midfield alongside Amrabat against Man City. He's way ahead of his age. For a 19-year-old, he plays like somebody in their prime, and I cannot wait to see what this player grows and builds into. The one thing I always do say about Mainoo is, though, and this is just how I try and live as a Man United fan, be patient with him. He's shown that he is the real deal, but there are going to be dips. There's going to be moments where he has a bad game. There's going to be moments where, the mainstream media try and turn against him, and we need to support him through that. People might say, well, you haven't supported Marcus Rashford. I don't think that's completely true. I really like Marcus Rashford. I think he's a quality player. I think on his day, he's one of the best left wingers in a counter-attacking style team in world football, genuinely. But the problem I've had with Marcus Rashford is I don't feel like his head is in the club anymore. He comes out saying, how much he loves the club and all the rest of it. But then on the pitch, we see him walking round, we see his head dropping and all the rest of it. And I think that's where my problem is with him. If a player's giving 150%, I will always back them. If they're a youth prospect, especially someone like Mainoo, who has shown us that he's a good player. Whereas someone like Scott McTominay, he's never really shown us that he's a good player. So my stance on McTominay has always been the same. He's a squad player. He's not good enough to start. But the thing with McTominay is he always gives 150%. So imagine you have a player like Marcus Rashford who has unbelievable ability. He's definitely a good player. People will say he's rubbish. I think that's very short-sighted. The season before last, he got 30 goals in one season. I think he was the first player since Wayne Rooney to get 30 goals in one season. He's definitely a good player. I think it's just his attitude. I think it's, the late nights in Belfast getting drunk. It's calling out people on Twitter. It's, there's all sorts of things that I think are really the underlying problem with Rashford. And apparently Marcus Rashford is going to stop going on social media. He put out a post, I think it was yesterday, saying he's going to have a break from social media and he's going to focus on just, getting back to 100% mentally. And the question I want to ask you guys, and I want to get your involvement and some level of discussion on, is this. Do you want Marcus Rashford to stay at Manchester United next season? Let me know in the comment section. So you can literally just keep it as simple as possible. You can either write Marcus Rashford stay or Marcus Rashford go. Let me know in the comment section. Me personally, it's really, really difficult. Because Marcus Rashford on his day, I think, as I said, is a very, very good player. But if he's going to continue with the same attitude, then I think you move him on. So, I don't know. I've put myself on the spot here, but I've got to answer it. I can't ask the question without answering it myself. I personally would probably move him on, I think. If you could get 60 to 80 million for him, which would then be classed as 100% profit, I think moving him on would probably make the most sense. We need money. We need to rebuild. He's definitely a good player. And even from his perspective as well, I think a new challenge would probably be good for him. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let's move over to the manager then. I didn't want to spend the whole show speaking about the manager because that feels like it's all we're talking about at the moment. But obviously, we spoke about Rashford. We spoke about Mainoo. Actually, quickly, let's talk about Mason Greenwood really quickly. So Mason Greenwood has just won the Player of the Season for Getafe. I mean, obviously, that's good, but it's not like Getafe have any other players of Mason Greenwood's quality. I think the thing we all tend to forget is Mason Greenwood is a quality player. And that's never been the issue with Mason Greenwood. You know, the people who don't want him to come back, it's not because he's not a good footballer. He is a good footballer, without a shadow of a doubt. He was described as a generational talent when he was at Man United, and I would agree with that. He was probably our best attacking player when he was here. But obviously the off-the-field issues, whatever your stance is on them, have made it very, very difficult for Mason Greenwood to return to Manchester United. It's the system in England versus what it's like in Spain is very different. Like, Mason Greenwood has been able to go to Getafe in Madrid and kind of go under the radar. You know, he doesn't have press following him to his house every time he goes to the shop. He kind of has just been able to play football. Whereas in England, literally, every time he goes to the shop, there'll be people following him. Every time he leaves his house, there'll be people following him. Every time his partner leaves his house, there'll be people following her. And every time, you know, they're out with their newborn baby, there'll be people following them. And I think that for that reason alone, whatever your stance is on the whole situation, I think him not being in England is probably best, even on his level, you know, him to be somewhere else. But he is still clearly a good player. Now, what we're hearing is that apparently Mason Greenwood is coming back to Manchester. Obviously, the season has now finished in La Liga, and Man United are now actively looking to sell him. So I'll keep you updated on that one. I think Mason Greenwood will leave the club this summer. I'd be very surprised if he stays. I think it would be a massive U-turn if Man United now just decide they're going to keep him. But you never know what's going to happen in football. You know, things can change very, very quickly. Everyone who's just joined the video, by the way, if you could do me a massive favour and give the video a like, let's try and hit 200 likes on this morning's show. I think we can do it. Let's try and achieve that. And if this is your first time watching, make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. I will be live throughout the whole of the transfer window. There'll be a video in the morning, a video in the evening, and if anything breaks during the day, I go live as well. So make sure you get involved, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and get involved here on Daily Red Devil. I'll come back to the chat in a minute and I'll read out some of your comments and stuff. So get your comments in. And remember, I want people to let me know, do you want Marcus Rashford to stay or to go? You can literally just write Marcus Rashford stay or Marcus Rashford go. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, moving on from that. Let's move over to the manager. So just to give a bit of a recap of what's been happening in the last 24 hours, Fabrizio Romano came out yesterday saying that INEOS are now having their end of season review. And the main part of that review is going to be about Erik ten Hag, about whether they want to continue with him as the manager. Okay? Fair enough. That's what any competent club should be doing. They should be looking at the whole season. They should be looking at everything, though. They should be looking at the injuries. They should be looking at, you know, what's gone wrong. They should have been looking at what happened in particularly bad performances and all the rest of it. And off the back of that, you've got Samuel Lutkehurst last night saying that apparently Man United are now considering keeping Erik ten Hag as their manager for next season. Now, the thing you have to remember is Erik ten Hag has 1 year left of his contract. Manchester United have the option to extend that by a further year. So, in theory, he's got 2 years left of his deal. 1 year guaranteed and then an optional extra year. So, them keeping him for one more season doesn't really have that much risk, if you think about it. We're in the part of a 3 to 5 year project, realistically. With any new manager, it should be 3 to 5 years before we're expecting to be competing for league titles, in my opinion. You know, if you went and signed Kieran McKenna or you went and got De Zerbi, we would be told by INEOS, be patient, it's a 3 to 5 year project. Now, we're 2 years into our current 3 to 5 year project. And one thing which I think is really, really interesting is this. There is a strong rumour this morning from very reliable sources that apparently Pep Guardiola is going to leave Man City next summer. He's got 1 year left of his contract. The reason I'm bringing this up is Man City will then obviously need to get a new manager. They'll be in a transition and they'll probably slide off from the level they are at the moment. Obviously, if they get charged for these 115 charges as well, that to me more sounds like what's going on here, that Pep Guardiola is going to leave before these 115 charges get convicted. But that's just my opinion. But the general gist of it is Pep Guardiola is probably going to leave Man City in a year's time. The reason I mention this is it would be in the 4th and 5th season of a project that I would be expecting us to be challenging for a title. Next year's the 3rd season. Next year, my expectation is that we win the Europa League. That's the minimum. We have to win the Europa League and we need to be challenging for top 4. That's my expectation for next season. And I'm confident that Erik ten Hag can achieve that. And then the following season, Pep Guardiola will be gone. Arsenal, I don't think Arsenal are going to keep up at the rate they are. I think they're going to slip off personally. But I think that in the 4th and 5th season, when Man City are going through a transition, which they will be with a new manager, we can then creep our way up and bridge that gap. That's my take on it anyway. I think you have to look at the whole picture. You've got to look at everything that's going on in football, and you've got to look at how long it's taken other teams to fulfill their project. Arteta's been at Arsenal for 5 years now. He's won one trophy in 5 years, the FA Cup. The first 2 seasons, he finished 8th and then 8th again. And then in the 3rd season, he finished 5th. And then in the 4th and 5th season, he finished 2nd and 2nd. So you can see there how another club who have been struggling over the last decade or longer. Arsenal haven't won a trophy, a Premier League for 20 years? Man United haven't won a Premier League trophy for 11 years. So I know we have achieved a little bit more than Arsenal in the last 20 years, obviously, but in the last 10 years, Man United and Arsenal have been struggling. Let's be honest, haven't we? We've both been struggling. So I think you have to look at that, and you have to kind of take some level of, not inspiration, but to look at how these other clubs are being run, and to look at how long it's taken other clubs to get to the position where they're challenging. We haven't won a Premier League for 11 years. We're not going to suddenly just hire Kieran McKenna and win the Premier League next season. I mean, it could happen, but I would say it's very, very unlikely, in my opinion. But just to give everyone a bit of a recap, there is a bit of a shock story coming out this morning, which I don't know what to make of this, but the headline this morning is that apparently Chelsea have been turned down by Kieran McKenna. This is coming out from The Guardian this morning, that apparently Kieran McKenna actually wants to stay at Ipswich. And apparently the new contract is going to be announced today. Apparently it's going to be an incredibly lucrative contract, meaning that he's going to be earning loads of money. There is obviously this work. I said this to you guys about a week ago. I said, all of these stories linking managers with Manchester United, all of these leaks from somewhere, all of this breaking news that Erik ten Hag's going to be sacked. Someone has had to give these journalists that information. And my understanding is this information hasn't been coming from INEOS. This information has been coming from the agents of managers who are looking for clubs. Thomas Tuchel, desperate for a job, just been sacked by Bayern Munich, desperate to come back to the Premier League. Chelsea don't want him. He is literally begging for Man United to give him the job. Kieran McKenna, he is just been promoted to the Premier League. He apparently wanted a new contract last summer. That was being reported by multiple people. Do you see where I'm going with this? People have agendas. And I have good understanding that these stories saying that Erik ten Hag has been sacked weren't given to these journalists by INEOS. They've come from external sources. They've come from, as I said, agents of managers who are looking for clubs. There are so many people out there looking for clubs. De Zerbi, Mourinho, Conte, Thomas Tuchel, Kieran McKenna, so many people. And there are so many people who are literally desperate to take Erik ten Hag's job. It's the biggest and best club in the world with the biggest fan base, and a club that will probably pay them way more than whatever else it is they've been earning at previous clubs. I mean, imagine how much De Zerbi would have been earning at Brighton versus what he'll earn at Man United. The best example of that is Anthony at Ajax, £20,000 a week. We pay Ajax €100 million for Anthony, and then we give him £200,000 per week in wages. We times his wages by 10 versus what he was earning at Ajax. And people wonder where these stories are coming from, because you've got to remember, right? These agents, their job is effectively to get the best club for their client. That's all their job is. That's all an agent has to do. And their reward of that will be a commission of their salary or a signing on fee or whatever it might be. So there are so many vultures effectively circling Erik ten Hag, desperately looking to take his job. So you've got to be very, very cautious of that. But the main kind of narrative this morning is that apparently INEOS are now strongly considering keeping Erik ten Hag for next season. Now, there's a bit of an argument amongst the fan base that some fans are disappointed that they feel that INEOS have given in to fan backlash. The amount of people speaking out about Erik ten Hag being sacked, the Manchester United Supporters Trust have spoken out. There are so many different fan groups and channels and stuff who are actively backing Erik ten Hag. I barely see anybody who wants to Erik ten Hag out, who has a platform, a big platform. And the point I'm trying to make here is some people are unhappy that over the last 10 years, we've all complained about, not having proper sporting people in the club, not having proper decisions being made. And now some people feel that INEOS are effectively giving in and they're listening to the fans, and that, they want INEOS to be able to make tough decisions. And you know what? I do agree with that. That is what we want. But the problem I have with it is I just can't understand INEOS's thinking. That's the bit that really puzzles me. I want INEOS to be able to make big decisions, and I want them to be able to, not listen to the fans in some way. But when 80 to 85% of the fan base want Erik ten Hag to stay, and the managers that they're talking to are Thomas Frank, De Zerbi, Graham Potter, Gareth Southgate, Thomas Tuchel, Poch, it doesn't make sense. Imagine if we did a poll. Let's do a hypothetical here. Imagine if Zinedine Zidane was pictured in Manchester this afternoon. I mean, this is hypothetical, right? But just play along with me just to try and see if my argument still stands. Imagine Zinedine Zidane was at Carrington today interviewing for the Manchester United job. Would your opinion then change? Would you still want Erik ten Hag to stay? Or say Ancelotti came out and decided he wanted a new challenge. He no longer wanted to manage Real Madrid and he was in Manchester interviewing for the job. Would you still want Erik ten Hag to stay? I'll be honest. My head would be turned a little bit, because clearly those two are world-class managers. Whereas Thomas Frank, fair play to Thomas Frank, but he's just finished 16th with Brentford. He's won nothing in his career. Roberto De Zerbi had a good first season at Brighton and he's just finished 10th. Graham Potter did okay at Brighton, won nothing. Did well at Brighton. Got sacked by Chelsea after 3 months. Thomas Tuchel was at Chelsea, won the Champions League, which was incredible, and then was sacked. Has gone to Bayern Munich with the best team in the Bundesliga by far. Won nothing. Didn't even win any of the cups. That's the thing which I think a lot of Man United fans are confused about. There isn't an obvious replacement manager out there. There isn't, someone of the level of a Jurgen Klopp or a Pep Guardiola or an Ancelotti or one of those types of names waiting for the job. It's all scraping round the bargain section in the shop. When you go in this, I know this is a bit disrespectful, but this is how I feel like it a little bit, right? When you go into the supermarket near when it's getting close to when the supermarket closes, right? And you go to the sandwich section and they've reduced all the sandwiches and they're 20p. And you're sat there and you're like, I don't really want that sandwich, but it's 20p, so I'm going to get it. And that kind of feels like what INEOS are doing at the moment. They're shopping in the clearance section. They're shopping for the managers that nobody wants. Thomas Tuchel wants to go back to Chelsea. They don't want him. Poch, I don't know who wants Poch. No one else wants Poch. Graham Potter, he's been jobless for 2 years pretty much. Gareth Southgate, nobody else wants Gareth Southgate. Big ups to Fred, who's just gifted 5 memberships to the Daily Red Devil Members Club. Thank you for all your support, my friend. I really, really do appreciate it. Everyone who's just joined the video, if you could do me a small favour, give the video a thumbs up, smash a like. Doesn't cost any money. It really helps to bring more people into the channel. It will allow us to do bigger and better things in the future. So please do smash a like. Let's try and see 200 likes on today's video. And if this is your first time watching, subscribe as well. Why not? We'll be live throughout the transfer window. I'll have all of your Manchester United news. So do subscribe, get involved in here on Daily Red Devil. Right, let's have a look at some of the comments in the live chat today then. So Blurry Face says, Ten Hag is a proven winner. He's inherited a lazy squad full of injuries. He works under the Glazers, which are clueless. Our medical team needs a revamp. Believe in the Dutch King. I agree with you, mate. Chris says, Zidane, who doesn't speak English. Yeah, that's a fair point. Fair point. I'll accept that one. Daniel says, I don't think they made the decision due to fans. Erik ten Hag won the FA Cup and threw a wrench in their sacking plans, and there are no good options out there. I somewhat agree with you, mate, but they could have easily nipped this story in the bud a couple of days ago. They could have easily said we're sticking with Erik ten Hag, but they didn't. So, yeah, I think that there has been an extreme level of fan backlash. As I said, there's been Manchester United supporters trust groups. There's been the supporters trust of the Stretford end, which is obviously the most vocal area of the Man United stadium. If you've ever been to Old Trafford, the Stretford end is the most vocal end, as in yeah, I mean, if you know, the Stretford end is the end. If you're attacking the Stretford end and you need a goal, they always say that they're so loud that they almost suck the ball into the net. And supposedly the supporters group for the Stretford end had written a letter to INEOS as well. And maybe they're not listening. Maybe this is their own decision. But I just think that in some ways, It can't just be a coincidence. Kashif says Hansi Flick has just been announced as the Barca manager. Yes, exactly. But yeah, keeping on Erik ten Hag, the story coming out this morning is that apparently Erik ten Hag wants to know whether he is going to be the manager or not this week. Because if he's not, he wants to go and find another club. He's on holiday at the moment. Apparently he's back in England on Friday, and he has effectively set a soft deadline where he wants to know where his future is. Either INEOS want to keep him, or as Erik ten Hag said, if they don't want me, I will go and win trophies somewhere else. That's a mic drop moment. For him to say that after beating Pep Guardiola's Man City, the juggernauts Man City with the best manager in the world, to come out and say, if INEOS don't want me, no problem. I will go and win trophies somewhere else. That is what I do. That is elite mentality there. He's not sat there saying, oh, we'll have some conversations. I hope to be here next season. He obviously does care, but if they don't want him, he'll go somewhere else and he'll keep winning. So I respect Erik ten Hag massively for that. So yeah, just to follow on from that, story coming out from a very reliable journalist this morning is that Erik ten Hag wants a quick decision to be made on his future, but the FA Cup win has now complicated matters for INEOS, as it means they must pay him a higher compensation fee should they move him on. So apparently, if Man United don't qualify for Europe, the squad earn 25% less in wages. But because we've now qualified for Europe, they'll carry on earning their current wages, which is bittersweet a bit, but it makes the Erik ten Hag sacking decision an even bigger decision for them, because his current wages are about 10 million a season. Plus, obviously, you've got to sack his assistant, Mitchell van der Gaag. You've got to sack Benny McCarthy, Steve McLaren. Like, if you're going to sack the manager, you've got to sack all of the people around him. There's no point keeping them and sacking the manager. That's just stupid. So, if Man United hadn't won the FA Cup and therefore not qualified for Europe, it would have been about 25% less that they'd have had to pay to sack him. So, that's another thing they're going to have to consider. Even though they've won the FA Cup, they're going to have to pay more money if they want to sack him. Let me just have a sip of my water quickly. Everyone smash a like on the video whilst I have a sip of my water. Keith says, this is an unpopular opinion that INEOS shouldn't listen to fans on a matter like this. Let the new structure review and decide what is best for the club. The thing is with you, Keith, right? I actually agree that INEOS need to make this decision for themselves. But my point has always been this. If INEOS, the people who we're trusting to bring back glory to Manchester United, these people who are telling us they know what they're doing, these people who are bringing in the best in class and all the rest of it, if they all sit around a table and come to the conclusion that sacking a manager in the middle of a project when he's won back-to-back trophies for the first time since Sir Alex Ferguson, then I don't really understand how we can trust them. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. Like, that's the bit which I'm struggling to get my head around. And I think, to be completely honest with you, if they make that decision of sacking Erik ten Hag, they're setting the new manager up to fail, really. Like, obviously the Man United fans will stick with the manager. They will, and they'll back the manager. But imagine how difficult the job's going to be if already the fan base is questioning it. Let me ask you this. When they announced that Erik ten Hag was going to be the manager of Manchester United, how many of you questioned it? I would say probably less than 5%. You were probably all so excited. You were ready to back him. Imagine if tomorrow they announced that Graham Potter's going to be the Man United manager. I would say 80-90% of the fan base will probably be worried and like, what the hell is happening? And that's the point I'm trying to make here. I don't understand. The only real reason for me that INEOS will decide to sack Erik ten Hag is if they want their own manager, which to me translates as somebody they can control, a puppet, a yes man, somebody who doesn't have any authority, somebody who effectively does whatever they want. That's the only reason I could see that they'd sack him, because, as I've said many, many times before, none of these managers that are available, as it stands at the moment, are better than Erik ten Hag. At the moment, So that's my stance on it. But as always, guys, let me know what you think of this in the comment section. There's not really any transfer news today because, as you can imagine, every single news story is just about the manager. There is some breaking news coming out here that apparently Manchester United have contacted Roberto De Zerbi's agent. It says no final decision yet. It says De Zerbi is a very popular option in a list of 2 to 3 names for United. Decision on Erik ten Hag first. So they're still, they're still weighing up their options. They're still interviewing people. The thing that's frustrating for me is that there's no communication. Manchester United could easily come out and say that this is what's happening. We're going to have a review, and by the end of next week, we'll have an answer, and then everyone would just be happy. But instead, it's like journalists saying this, another journalist saying that, and it just feels very much like what it was like under the Glazers, doesn't it? Well, it is still under the Glazers, because I saw a story earlier on today that apparently Joel Glazer is going to be on the board and have a vote in whether Erik ten Hag stays or goes. Apparently, he's one of the deciding votes. So even though we think that we've got rid of the Glazers and, we're told that INEOS are going to control the sporting side, Joel Glazer is still going to be sat on every single one of those meetings and is still going to have a sign-off on every single thing to do with the football. So don't, just believe that INEOS are now doing everything and the Glazers are sat there having no involvement. Like, that's not the case. The Glazers do still have involvement. They do still have a say. So, yeah. I'm gonna wrap the video up here, guys. I will be back at 6 o'clock. If anything breaks during the day, I will go live as well. Please make sure to smash a like before you leave. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. This has been Daily Red Devil. Have a lovely day, everybody, and I'll speak to you all at 6 p.m. tonight.